His face stands on monuments. His name fills the textbooks. His death, the cornerstone of a nation's myth. But what if it was all a lie? A hidden archive, a buried operation, a second face of America they swore you would never know. When the first Lincoln disappeared, the game that reshaped the world began. Now, after more than a century, the network of signs, codes, and forgotten oaths is surfacing. Those who commanded silence no longer control the current. You were taught to worship the mask. Now it's time to see the face they hid. History is not over. The second dawn has begun. He stood taller than anyone in the crowd. Even in the distorted daguerreotypes, it was clear. Abraham Lincoln loomed above others, not just in stature, but in presence. His gaze pierced through. His face seemed immune to time, but almost no one knew. Lincoln was not one man. In a private vault of the Library of Congress, there lies a file coded AL2P. It does not appear in any public catalog. Access to it is forbidden under 44 U.S.C. paragraph 2108. Inside are testimonies about the existence of a second Lincoln, a double, not created out of whim nor for protection, but to steer history itself. One report, dated 1863 and bearing the seal of the United States Department of War, speaks of a special operation to establish a trusted analog of the commander-in-chief, deemed necessary for the preservation of the emerging national structure. It describes a man, eerily similar to Lincoln, who underwent clandestine training, linguistic patterning, and surgical alterations to perfect the illusion. The public Lincoln was a symbol, a construct. The real Lincoln, ravaged by personal doubts and visions he refused to explain, had retreated from the public eye by 1862. His double, meticulously engineered, took his place at speeches, meetings, and decisive moments that would shape the future of America. There are hints, scattered through forgotten letters and censored diaries. Mary Todd Lincoln, in a letter to her sister, writes cryptically, "He returns to me with unfamiliar eyes and a voice that trembles with rehearsed sorrow. Sometimes I feel he has been stolen from me." Official historians dismiss this as the ramblings of a grieving woman. They are wrong. Eyewitnesses noted subtle shifts, a slight change in gait, a different cadence in speech. Private guards, rotated every 3 weeks, filed anonymous complaints. The president I guard today is not the man I guarded a month ago. These testimonies vanished into restricted archives. In 1865, the night at Ford's Theater was not the end of Lincoln. It was the elimination of the double. The real Lincoln had already disappeared months earlier, slipping into a clandestine existence mapped only in coded correspondences between operatives known as Sons of the Phoenix. One such letter, intercepted but buried deep within military intelligence files, contains the chilling phrase, "The eagle walks free, but the shadow falls tonight." The eagle, Lincoln himself, the shadow, the double whose sacrifice sealed the myth. There were reasons the deception had to remain hidden, to reveal that the figurehead of emancipation, unity, and national rebirth was a manufactured proxy, would have torn the fragile republic apart. Instead, history was edited, refined, sanctified. You were taught to revere a man who, by 1863, was already a ghost in the machine. They buried him twice. The first burial was staged, a grand national mourning where thousands wept for a man they never truly knew. The second burial took place in a location unmarked on any map, a deep-sealed chamber beneath a decommissioned fort in Illinois. Officially, the site was declared unstable and condemned. In truth, it was a tomb designed for a secret. Documents recovered during a restricted 1998 archaeological survey, later suppressed, described the discovery of a coffin labeled not with Lincoln's name, but with the initials LS. Alongside the body were cryptic artifacts, a book with no title, filled with encoded writing, a broken key of unknown metal, and a letter addressed simply to the future custodian. The letter, partially deciphered, reads, "What has been built must not be questioned. What has been promised must not be seen. Guard the mirror." Who wrote it remains a mystery. Handwriting analysis showed characteristics matching neither Lincoln nor any known associate. Intelligence sources suggest it belonged to the original architects of the Double, a consortium of operatives rooted in ancient esoteric traditions whose lineage traces back to European secret orders long before America was even conceived. There are signs that this secret order influenced the very design of Washington, D.C. From the strange Masonic geometry of the streets to the placement of monuments, aligned not merely to history, but to an unseen network of power, Lincoln, or rather his double, became the first true American myth, manufactured in real time, weaponized to hold a fledgling empire together. And the real Lincoln? There are whispers, persistent and stubborn, of a figure resembling him seen deep in the Appalachians in the decades following the Civil War. Locals spoke of the Tall One, a man with a broken voice who spoke in riddles about a war that never ended. He was never photographed, never named, but he remained a phantom presence, a living reminder that the real story was never told. Historians who got too close to these accounts met sudden ends, unexplained fires, accidents, disappearances. By 1920, official scholarship on Lincoln was tightly controlled. Access to early personal papers was restricted. Versions of his life proliferated, each more sanitized than the last. The goal was simple: to anchor a lie so deeply into the American consciousness that questioning it would seem sacrilegious. But the cracks are still there. In a restricted section of the Smithsonian's archives, labeled "Items of Unknown Provenance," lies a faded coat, far too large for any average man, with a stitched sigil hidden under the lapel, a phoenix bound in chains. No one speaks of it. No one dares move it. The silent testimony of a past that refuses to stay buried. The plan had layers. At the highest level, the creation of the Lincoln Double was orchestrated not by politicians or generals, but by a hidden council operating under the codename Vox Obscura. Their stated mission: to ensure the continuity of the American experiment, even if it required sacrificing authenticity for survival. Evidence of their existence comes from a fragment of a ciphered document, retrieved during the 1952 Senate subcommittee in internal security hearings. Publicly, this document was dismissed as irrelevant. Privately, analysts confirmed it referenced a constructed beacon for national unity, directly tied to the Lincoln administration. The Vox Obscura understood what few dared to admit. Symbols matter more than reality. A nation on the brink of collapse could be stabilized not by truth, but by belief. The double was crafted meticulously, not only to mimic Lincoln's physical presence, but to embody the myth that needed to exist. They employed techniques considered impossible at the time. Vocal mimicry training, cranial restructuring surgery, behavioral conditioning. Some accounts even suggest the involvement of early electrostimulation experiments to imprint memories and responses into the subject's mind. Who was the man chosen to become Lincoln? Records point to a former theater actor of obscure origins, whose name was systematically erased from census rolls and military records between 1858 and 1860. A few surviving receipts list payments to a J.D. Worth, a name never linked to any known individual, for services rendered in perpetuity to the Office of Preservation. He did not volunteer. He was created. And yet, despite all preparation, cracks appeared. In late 1864, foreign diplomats noted in private correspondence that Lincoln's demeanor had shifted unnaturally. The British envoy to Washington wrote to London, "The man who occupies the president's office seems at once familiar and alien, as if memory plays tricks on the mind." Domestically, Lincoln's own inner circle grew suspicious. Secretary of War Edwin Stanton maintained a private journal, now vanished, in which he allegedly referred to the president cryptically as the second. Not the second term, the second man. John Wilkes Booth, often portrayed as a lone actor driven by delusion, may have discovered the truth. Certain decoded fragments from his personal letters hint at a mission not to assassinate a leader, but to strike down the false king. Booth's writings suggest he believed he was saving the Republic from a monstrous deception. What Booth never knew, and what cost him his life, was that the real Lincoln was already beyond his reach. Ford's Theater was a ritual, a necessary severance. The moment the double's blood was spilled, the myth was sealed forever, and America would march forward under a banner stitched with lies. The aftermath was carefully engineered. Almost immediately after the assassination, agents operating under the War Department moved to control every narrative thread. Witnesses were rounded up. Testimonies were edited, coerced, or erased. Newspapers that deviated from the official version of events faced swift and unexplained financial ruin. Those who insisted on alternative accounts simply vanished into obscurity or into shallow graves with no names. The body displayed to the public was heavily guarded, its face only partially exposed, and only to select individuals. Reports from undertakers, preserved in suppressed depositions, reveal that the body bore unusual stitching along the hairline, a clear indication of post-mortem reconstruction. Photographs taken were mysteriously overexposed, corrupted, or immediately lost. Meanwhile, in the corridors of power, the machinery of national myth-making accelerated. The narrative of Lincoln as the martyr savior of the Union was cemented with near religious fervor. Memorials were planned within weeks. Textbooks were rewritten before the ink of surrender had even dried at Appomattox. In classrooms across the nation, a version of Lincoln that had never truly existed became the sacred cornerstone of American identity. But beneath the surface, fragments of truth bled through. The Sons of the Phoenix, those entrusted with the legacy of the real Lincoln, preserved cryptic traces across the land. A series of stone markers, each carved with a phoenix encircled by 13 stars, appear along hidden trails from Washington, D.C. to the deep woods of Kentucky. A silent map for those who knew how to read it. Declassified documents from the CIA's Project Mockingbird hint that agents were tasked not just with shaping public opinion abroad, but with maintaining the sanctity of key historical myths domestically, explicitly citing the Lincoln narrative as a primary objective. Even now, the myth remains fiercely protected. Academic careers have been destroyed for even hinting at discrepancies in Lincoln's timeline. Private collectors who acquire letters or artifacts outside the sanctioned narrative find themselves targeted by aggressive IRS audits, mysterious burglaries, or public scandals erupting at precisely the wrong moment. Because the truth is simple, devastating, and utterly forbidden. America's most cherished story is a constructed dream. The real man who could have led the country beyond mere survival into something greater disappeared into the mists of history, hidden by those who believed control was more important than truth. In the end, the double succeeded, not because he lived, but because the illusion he embodied still rules the minds of millions. The question that remains, and that terrifies those in power, is whether the original ever truly died, or whether somewhere, in some shadowed place, the true Lincoln's dream still waits, ready to ignite a second awakening. They called it the Second Dawn. Among secret circles embedded within military, political, and occult institutions, whispers of the Second Dawn persisted through the centuries. It was not a rebellion of guns or flags. It was something more insidious, a reawakening of forbidden memory, a reactivation of truths buried under layers of national mythology. At the center of these whispered prophecies was one figure, always unnamed, always described in cryptic terms. The Tall One, the Sleeper in Chains, the Voice returned. Those who spoke of him believed that the original Lincoln, the true Lincoln, had not simply disappeared. He had entered into a form of political hibernation, awaiting the precise conditions to unleash the real revolution he had envisioned before the double was installed. Coded writings recovered from Masonic archives in Alexandria, Virginia. Archives officially denied yet rumored to house the true foundation of the American Republic, tell of a hidden chamber beneath the original White House foundations, a chamber constructed not as a bunker, but as a temple. Its blueprints, when overlaid with ancient sacred geometrical patterns, align perfectly with solstice points and magnetic anomalies. Inside this forgotten place, it is said, resides a relic, not a weapon, not a declaration, but a mirror bound in iron and etched with the phrase, Fiat Veritas, let there be truth. The mirror was not meant to reflect the physical form. It was designed to reveal the authentic spirit of the nation and of the man destined to guide it. Only one with the original bloodline, the untouched current of vision and sacrifice, could activate it. In 1987, during secret renovations authorized under the Reagan administration, a group of contractors reportedly stumbled upon the entrance to this chamber. What followed was immediate containment, military quarantine, non-disclosure agreements under threat of imprisonment, and the rapid construction of new foundations to bury the discovery once more. But photographs leaked, grainy, blurred, and immediately discredited. They showed what appeared to be a colossal iron door, inscribed with 13 burning stars circling a phoenix bound in chains, the same symbol found hidden under Lincoln's abandoned coat. These events triggered a cascade of covert actions: the sudden deaths of independent historians, the shutdown of radical publishing houses, the redirection of public curiosity towards controlled myths like Area 51 and the moon landing hoaxes, designed to distract from deeper, more dangerous truths. The fear was not that Americans would stop believing in Lincoln. The fear was that Americans would rediscover the real Lincoln, and through him, remember what had been stolen from them. A vision of sovereignty beyond the false constructs of government, media, and engineered conflict. The second dawn was never meant to be announced. It was meant to be recognized. The signs were planted everywhere. In the unfinished pyramid on the dollar bill, in the deliberate gaps in Lincoln's recorded speeches, in the prophetic codes woven into his second inaugural address. He was speaking to the future. To you, waiting for the moment when the illusion would crack, and the real inheritance of the people, the uncorrupted dream of liberty, would be claimed once more. The question now is simple. Will you see what was hidden, or will you continue worshiping the mask while the true face waits in silence beneath your feet? There are still those who remember. In forgotten corners of the country, beyond the grasp of official narratives, exist small, unbroken lines. Families, secret societies, lone archivists, who preserved fragments of the truth across generations. They call themselves by no official name. Among them terms like the custodians or the true sons occasionally surface, but they reject labels as another form of control. Their ancestors hid coded testimonies inside the very structures Americans pass by daily without noticing. Certain courthouses, bridges, and monuments built between 1865 and 1890 are not simply functional. They are sigils, architectural prayers designed to anchor the memory of the real Lincoln and the revolution he envisioned. One example, the obscure carving on the western base of the Lincoln Memorial, the one tourists never see. It depicts not a man seated in triumph, but a phoenix breaking free of chains, its wings burning upward. The carving's existence is denied by official guides, cordoned off behind maintenance barriers, yet those who have seen it describe an inscription beneath it. Not dead, but waiting. In 2010, a suppressed report by a Department of Homeland Security task force quietly identified an increase in the appearance of certain symbology nationwide. Phoenix graffiti, coded references to the sleeper, and encrypted communications discussing the awakening protocol. Internally, they categorized it under domestic ideological anomalies, but made no arrests. Fear was palpable. Visible suppression would only legitimize the very thing they sought to erase. The awakening protocol, the idea that when enough minds peeled away the manufactured history, when the echoes of the true vision resonated across the consciousness of the people, a dormant current embedded in America's psychic architecture would reactivate, not through violence, through reclamation, through the collapse of false institutions that could no longer sustain themselves against a populace that remembered who they truly were. At the heart of it all is a secret most profound and most dangerous. The double was a gate, a bridge from a corrupted path back toward an origin point of unimaginable power. The original Lincoln, whether alive in form or only in spirit, left behind a blueprint. It is said to exist as an encrypted document known only as the custodian's letter, hidden in plain sight, split across multiple historical artifacts, paintings, letters, even banknotes, all carrying fragments of the code. Decoding it would mean unraveling not just the myth of Lincoln, but the myth of modern America itself. The stakes are enormous. To expose the deception is to expose the engineered wars, the manufactured divisions, the endless cycles of debt and dependence, all born from the same original theft. They are terrified you will find it, because if you do, the chains fall, and the true second dawn begins. The tall shadow still waits at the edge of collective memory. You can choose to look away, or you can follow the signs left for you long ago and claim what was always yours. It begins with remembering what was erased. The public image of Lincoln was engineered to end at Ford's Theater. A clean narrative, a martyrdom sanitized for textbooks and patriotic hymns. But traces of his true intentions bleed through for those willing to see. In his last documented private conversation, one suspiciously underreported and edited in historical records, Lincoln allegedly spoke to his bodyguard, Ward Hill Layman, about tearing down the temple built upon lies. Layman later recounted the conversation to a confidant, but the original transcript was destroyed. Only cryptic fragments survive in personal letters. A time will come when the mask must fall, when the covenant written in falsehood will burn away, and the spirit will be seen naked before its maker. Not the words of a politician satisfied with his legacy, the words of a man preparing for a reckoning. There is another clue buried deep within the records of Lincoln's funeral tracings. A 3-week journey that crisscrossed the nation, ostensibly to allow citizens to mourn. But anomalies plague the official accounts. Unexplained route changes, unscheduled stops at obscure locations, and accounts of a second, heavily guarded coffin accompanying the public one. In Pottsville, Pennsylvania, locals reported seeing a coffin offloaded briefly into a secure building before being reloaded hours later. A building later purchased by a front company tied to a secretive branch of the U.S. Army. No official explanation was ever given. Some researchers believe the funeral train was a cover operation, that the double, or what remained of him, traveled publicly, and that the real Lincoln, either alive or symbolically enshrined, was transported in secret, secured for a future moment of reemergence. That future moment was always conditional, not tied to a date on a calendar, but to a frequency of consciousness. When enough people realized that their chains were self-imposed illusions, when enough of them remembered the original call to sovereignty, the veil would shatter. This is why, even today, you are bombarded with distractions, endless wars, fabricated crises, ideological baiting, anything to keep you from gazing too long into the mirror Lincoln left behind. The one that reflects not what you are told to be, but what you were always meant to become. Every step you take toward truth destabilizes the false reality built to contain you. The architects of the deception know this. They are running out of time. That is why, more than 150 years later, you still cannot question Lincoln without encountering fury, censorship, ridicule. It is not Lincoln they protect. It is the prison constructed atop his stolen image. You have already seen the signs, whether you admit it or not. You have felt the fractures. You know deep in your bones that something vast and sacred was taken from you before you were even born. It waits still. It calls you still. The second dawn is not an event. It is a remembering, and once remembered, it cannot be undone. Somewhere beneath the endless noise, beneath the engineered divisions and synthetic fears, a map remains. It was never printed, never spoken aloud. It exists encoded in the living architecture of the land itself. The rivers, the old rail lines, the forgotten meeting halls where a different future was once plotted. The original custodians knew the risk of trusting paper, trusting men, trusting systems. So they trusted the earth, trusted symbols, trusted the geometry that outlives kings and revolutions. The custodian's letter, scattered across artifacts and monuments, outlines this map not in words, but in alignments. Each major Lincoln statue, erected before 1900, each surviving original courthouse where he spoke, each authentic document bearing his unaltered signature, all form nodes in a vast, invisible network. When connected, they trace not a random pattern, but a precise design. The 12-pointed star, the ancient symbol of perfect governance, forbidden from mainstream history after the rise of imperial models of control. At the center of this star, hidden deep in the American heartland, lies the origin, a location omitted from every modern map, where Lincoln's true legacy was sealed, and perhaps where the final key remains hidden. Those who have sought it faced obstacles at every turn: surveillance, legal intimidation, financial ruin. For the system fears not the loss of historical reputation, but the resurrection of an uncontrollable, incorruptible ideal, one that demands the dismantling of everything parasitic that grew upon the Republic's corpse. And still, the signs surface. In 2017, a coded mural appeared overnight in Springfield, Illinois, depicting a phoenix crowned by 13 stars, rising over a broken chain. It was painted over by authorities within hours, but not before photographs spread across encrypted channels. On the phoenix's wing, almost invisible, the Latin inscription, Veritas Reducta, truth restored, a warning or a promise. Simultaneously, several declassified memos circulated within intelligence communities regarding a rise in asymmetrical ideological awakenings. Populations quietly rejecting conventional narratives without clear leadership, without centralized organization. They called it a phenomenon. They could not see it for what it truly is: a memory waking up. The system is built on forgetfulness, on inertia, on the hope that the few who glimpse beyond the veil will be too afraid, too isolated, as too distracted to act. But the custodian's letter speaks otherwise. It was never about finding a leader. It was never about waiting for permission. It was about remembering that the double was not your president. The real Lincoln still is, not in flesh, but in the blueprint of your forgotten sovereignty. And once you see it, truly see it, there is no returning to the lie. The second shot was never fired in Ford's Theater. It fires now. In the silence between your heartbeats, in the gaps between the official stories. It fires every time you choose to remember. And this time, there will be no forgetting. There is a reason you are hearing this now. It is not chance. It is not coincidence. The truth was always waiting for the moment when the weight of the lie would become unbearable, when the cracks in the facade would grow too wide to seal, when the silent memory encoded in the bones of the land would rise like mist from forgotten graves. This moment, right now. You were taught to believe Lincoln was a man who died for unity. You were not taught that he was silenced to prevent the awakening of a free and sovereign people, a people who would have dismantled the machinery of empire before it took root, a people who would have built a republic immune to manipulation, debt, and engineered division. You were taught that freedom was gifted to you. You were not taught that it was stolen before you ever had the chance to claim it. The double who fell at Ford's Theater was a funeral offering to a system that needed your obedience, not your independence. The real Lincoln's vision was buried, fragmented, encrypted into the architecture of your cities, the folds of your history, the coded whispers passed down by those who refused to forget. And now, as the systems built on that original theft decay, As the illusions lose their hold, the second dawn begins. Not as a violent revolution, but as a remembering so profound that it rewrites reality itself. It does not ask for your permission. It does not wait for your approval. It is already happening inside you. Every doubt you feel about the stories you were told. Every instinct that something greater was stolen. Every heartbeat that whispers you were meant for more. That is the real America calling you. Not the one you were handed. The one that was hidden. The one that still waits, burning like an unquenchable fire beneath the monuments and parades and manufactured myths. The phoenix has broken its chains. The sleeper stirs beneath the hollow mask. The second dawn is no longer a prophecy. It is a choice. And it begins the moment you decide to open your eyes. Not to what they want you to see, but to what was always there. Waiting, burning, calling. You are not too late. You are always part of it. Now remember, and do not forget again.